the spring coaches are not going to be getting paid their full stipend. Okay, they're going to be cut about 80% of their salary if things go at present. Nationally, that puts the ICSD school district at nearly the bottom of that category for schools nationally, as to whether they did or did not and how much they did pay their spring coaches given the suspended season. A couple other things that need to be mentioned here is this money was already budgeted for the coaches. So what is the school going to do with that money? There were savings in transportation, bus drivers, petrol, all sorts of things that occurred due to the suspension of the season. Right now, the school is spending, I'm not sure what the cost of that new sports facility is, but it's in the millions. And the school is able to come up with millions of dollars for a facility like that, but cannot pay the $4,000 to $5,000 that each of the spring coaches gets. It also should be noted that though the season is suspended, there's an immense amount of effort that all of these coaches put in year after year after year. The average hourly wage for a coach after you calculate all the hours is somewhere between $6 and $8 an hour. Okay. So I think everyone should keep that in mind. So then I want to ask Lavelle, okay, and I want to ask also Mr. Van Kuren and anybody else here who is a paid administrator. All of the 40 paid administrators that I cited made all well over $100,000 or over $100,000. Some of them well over $100,000. Okay, are they also taking cuts of that range in their salary during these unprecedented times? The top 40 administrators combined make $5 million. I won't even go into the percentage of what that equates with the coaches, the spring coaches, okay? But if each of those top 40 administrators took only 1.5% of their salary and donated it, we could pay for the entirety of the spring coaching staff during these unprecedented times. I feel like that would be a stand-up move. And I can say personally, as a dedicated coach who's been training these kids, not just in the school system, but for almost 20 years now that go to ICSD, that I am, as a matter of principle and ethics, this is one of the most appalling things I have ever seen come forth from any school system.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
So can I get an answer? Will Mr. Van Kuren, Lavelle, will you be taking a cut in your salary as well?
We have a section, unfortunately, the way in which our board meetings run, they operate under Robert's rules. There'll be a time during board responses in which folks can give responses to your questions. So we appreciate you asking them.
Thanks, Sean.
Additional folks that may want to speak during public comments time.
Anyone else?
We'll give it
a few more minutes, another minute, if we're good. Sean, I'm not hearing anyone right now, but certainly that was...
Nope, but everyone has the ability to mute and unmute themselves. And so if there's someone else that wants to give a quick comment, otherwise, yes, Mr. President, I think we can continue on with the agenda.
Right. The next item is student reps. I'm not sure whether any of the appointed student reps to the board are on this meeting or not. And if they wish to speak, now would be the time. And I think we'll hear from some students in a few minutes, but always happy to hear from our student reps to the board.
Hi, I'm a student rep.
Excellent.
So the situation among students still hasn't changed that drastically after the new plan. And most of the classes are going pretty just standardly. I think there's still a few lingering concerns among students about certain events like prom, junior prom, and how like the situation may keep evolving past the like planned closed dates. I think most teachers provide like moderate amounts of work that are relatively easy to keep up with. And during like the office hours and meeting hours, they'll usually discuss like what's going on for like the assignments for that week, and they'll answer any questions, but I think that varies from teacher to teacher. Personally, I feel like online learning hasn't been as good as in-person learning, but I think that's kind of a given. But interestingly, some clubs like the IHS math team and the brain team are also meeting online and are trying to keep up some of their competitions through online scrimmages or online competitions.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you giving us an update. That's great from Ithaca High. So thanks, Alex. And if there's none of the other students on board, we'll just go to board responses. And obviously we could have an opportunity to respond to what we heard earlier from anyone.
I'm happy to restart a quick response. So I want to thank the comment in regards to coaches. I think you'd be surprised how much in agreement we are with a great majority of what was stated, other than the moral travesty aspect that we have to consider, that we are part of institutions and state regulations that require a great deal of negotiation and navigation. There's no doubt that we highly regard our coaches and the amount of work they do for our students. That is undeniable. It also requires us to have a number of conversations, not just at Ithaca City School District, but Ithaca College, Cornell, and other places that beg the question about what services we're able to provide during these time periods. I know there will be ongoing conversations between the Ithaca Teacher Association and other union representation about how to compensate folks, particularly for their time and effort and the emotional support they're providing for our students as well. So at this point in time, this is, while we are talking about a phase one payment for our coaches, it is not a finalized conversation. There'll be an ongoing dialogue, and we look forward to engaging in that dialogue, even while I know it creates some hardship for folks. But don't mistake that slow process for board members not being greatly appreciative of the role of not just that our coaches play in the role of our students, but advisors, theater directors, the list can go on. And so that's an ongoing conversation in many regards. And to Alex, thank you very much for sharing from a student perspective. As a faculty member who had a little bit less than a week to transition from a course that is so discussion-based to be, for lack of a better word, a distant or online version. I keep repeating the comment that what we're doing right now is not distance learning, but crisis learning. And so I would not expect that the quality of education that we're providing right now would be similar to what happens in person, given that we've had no time to really prepare or be intentional about our pedagogy in that way. If for some unfortunate reason we are expected to continue this pedagogy for next school year, I would anticipate that our classes would be much more robust and much more intentional. With that being said, I'm being optimistic and hopeful that we'll be able to share classroom spaces together and return to a maybe updated and improved version of what we all expect from teaching, myself included. So thank you for the comments, and I look forward to how we negotiate and find solutions together.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone else? Any other board
Hi,
members?
Rob. This is Chris.
Yep,
I just like to respond to the comments about coaching. I echo Sean's sentiments, and thank you. I do want to You know, you referred to Bob as Mr. Van Kuren and Dr. Brown as Louvel. He is Dr. Brown. I know you don't, I hope you didn't intend anything disrespectful, but we just want to make sure as we move forward, you know, this is a conversation, and we truly appreciate everything our coaches do. We work in conjunction with them year round. Like Sean said, this is phase one. And also to recognize when you ask for pay cuts or reductions and things like that, when you're comparing stipends and different things, can we keep it, you know, to the facts? Like I said earlier, this is a conversation, and we wholeheartedly take this seriously and recognize the work that everyone does. So in no way, shape, or form do we want this to be a travesty. So I just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Chris. Anyone else right now? I will only add that I am, as most know, I am an ex-Ithaca High athlete, father of an Ithaca High athlete. The athletic and fine and performing arts are very critical to the culture of our district. So this is certainly echo Sean and Chris, and we will continue the dialogue and how to navigate how we move forward. We will know more as a district. The state will know more, frankly, at the end of the week when the governor gives us some guidance of what may happen over the next few months. I sincerely hope that we can have spring sports in some form yet this year, but that's out of our hands. And so we're just going to keep navigating and keep doing the best we can for the students in this district. So if no one else has, but then we'll just keep whatever happens. We will make it great for the kids in this district. But let's move on, if we could. If no one else has a comment, to the consent agenda. And I need a motion.
I'll move the consent agenda. It's Moira.
Thanks, Moira.
Second.
Second by Chris. Thanks, Chris. We know that the personnel report was modified a bit. Any other questions regarding the consent? Fairly minimal, looks like. Correct? All right. And so Tricia, I will ask that you do a call the roll, and we will vote on the consent agenda.
Okay. Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
We need, you're muted, Sean.
I appreciate the reminder. Yes.
Thank you.
Eldred Harris.
I am here. Hello.
Happy birthday, Eldred.
Yes, I don't know how long I'll be staying with you. There's cake waiting, but I love you all.
Okay. Nicole
Eldred,
LaFave.
how do you, hold on, Eldred, how do you vote on the consent agenda?
Oh, yes.
I was thinking that as a yes for the birthday cake, so we're good. All right.
I got the strawberries on the brain. Sorry.
All right, no, it's all good. Go ahead, Tricia.
Nicole LaFave. I don't think she's there. Nicole.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Moira Lang.
Yes.
Christopher Malcolm.
Wow, Christopher, yes.
Ann Reichland.
Yes.
Got it.
That was Ann. Okay. And Patricia Wazaloo.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yes.
Pat's always last, right, Pat? Good.
I am now. Yep.
All right.
I can handle it.
Thanks, Pat. As
Just
always,
call me
Pat,
the cleanup batter, Rob, right? Is that what I am now?
Pat, you are always on fire. That is batting cleanup. That's great. And Dr. Brown.
Oh, yes. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, Mr. Ainsley. We have a special treat tonight. I wish to use our time, my time, at this point in the agenda, to introduce you to some special friends. The most important vote that the board has taken in my 10 years here was in my first year when you voted to allow for the formation of a student superintendent advisory council. That group of middle school and high school students representing all of our schools has informed our work more so than any other group in our community. They've been superstars. I feel like I've grown up with them. And tonight I bring to you three who wish to share some of their perspectives and experiences while they've been home and while our buildings have been closed. We've had multiple conversations and they have an interesting story to share, perspectives to share. We have Alex here, Ray, and Ahi. I think Ahi is on as well. They'll tell you a little bit more about themselves, but again, I must tell you that they're sharp and they've taught me so much in our time together. And I think, yeah, I met you, Ray, when you were a third grader now. So, and Alex, when you were a fourth grader. So we've grown up together, and I'm looking forward to hearing their thoughts that they share with you what the last month and a half, 2 months have been like for them. So it'd be rather informal. Maybe we'll start with Alex, and then we'll go to Ray and Ahi, and you introduce yourselves, where you're from, and maybe share your first reflection or reaction to the last 2 months here. So Alex, go for it.
Dr. Brown, I believe Alex is muted. You have the opportunity to unmute Alex.
I do. Okay. Oh, I'm in control. Okay, here we go. All
Yeah,
right.
I felt
Go
so
ahead, Alex.
bad.
There we go.
I couldn't unmute myself. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a junior at LACS, and so I'll be giving some perspective on the LACS view of distance learning. As you know, LACS is a pretty, tight-knit school. A sense of community is important there. We know that this distance learning, or, as some of us are calling it, crisis learning, is, it's going smoothly, but some of the things I'm losing are, I feel, very key to LACS's success is, we can't do small group talks. I've seen some teachers attempt it, and it's awkward, it's clunky. And there were going to be some losses for sure. This one, it's a tough one though. Other than that, I think everyone is doing a great job. I think this is going way better than I ever would have thought it would have gone. And I think many other people have the same view as mine. It's running pretty smoothly. I think workload is the right amount. That's what I have to say.
Thanks, Alex. Ray, what's on your heart?
Hi, I'm Ray Hessler. I am a senior at Ithaca High School. I've been in Dr. Brown's group for I think 6 or 7 years. And distance learning, as a senior, it's definitely been really tough. You've lost a lot of things that you've been looking forward to for your whole school career. But you also gain some things in a sense that now, at least I've been spending a lot of time outside with my family, but I know for a lot of seniors, it's been a lot to take on distance learning all of a sudden. It came as a very big shock that school was just canceled on Friday the 13th, ironically. But from the senior perspective, I reached out to a lot of fellow students and asked them to give me their feedback and what they've liked, what they've not liked, what they're wondering. So I've gathered a lot of questions from them and suggestions, what's going well, what's not. I think a lot of the general consensus was, we get it. It's a huge change, and teachers and administrators have made great sacrifices, and we're all very impressed with how fast and how meticulous things have been switched over. And for the most part, it's ran very smoothly, which is quite impressive for such a large school district. But I know from the senior perspective, things like prom and graduation and senior trips and senior funding, there's a lot of questions surrounding those. And I know there's not always answers, especially with how sudden everything's been. But communication has also been a big thing that not only students but teachers have been concerned with. I reached out to some of my teachers as well if they wanted me to relay any information in this meeting. And the main thing was they feel that Ithaca as a community is very good at having this communication. And I think a lot of people feel that it's been lost with this crisis learning. So I think a lot of teachers and students would love more communication being seen, whether it's the relationships between students and teachers or teachers and the board, or just overall the big idea of how things are being relayed to students and families and administrators. I have a big long list of things, but it's quite long that a lot of students have suggested, so I guess we'll pass it on to Ahi.
Hey, are you on? I don't see your name showing up. If you're on, raise a hand, hit a like button, do something cool. With that, while we're waiting to get in touch with her, maybe Alex, and for you, Ray, and I know you have a long list, Ray, and I'm sure you're going to send that to me anyway. But if you could think about, we will be coming back to the building soon. And you two have informed what's happened in our building for the last 7, 8 years now. What would you want to see differently, see happen differently in our schools when we re-enter, whether it's in a couple of weeks or in the fall? And I know, Ray, you're going to be someplace else, but what would you want to see the school district evolve to based on this last 2 months experience?
I think that this, especially being such a large school district, we are a huge school district with lots of students with lots of different backgrounds and cultures and areas where they live. And I think that we've never faced something like this, not even just ICSD, but our states as a whole, our country as a whole has never faced something like this that came on so fast. So I think obviously this has been a learning experience for everyone. We now have a plan in place. It's improved, it's changed. But I think working towards something like having plans for senior trips and funding and proms and graduations and what to do in case something like this happens again, I think it would make a lot of students feel better. Clubs and sports, I know a lot of student athletes who rely on stuff like this are very disappointed, and there's nothing we can do but except make a plan for the future and work towards a new plan for the present.
Thanks, Ray. Alex?
Well, I think what I've learned a lot is communication is key. I think we were doing a good job before, but it's so important now, seeing it that, the constant amount of emails can be a bit much, but as much as they annoy me, they are really helpful. Because I am informed of what's going on. The communication was the most important part to me. It's helped me, keep connections and yet stay on top of my schoolwork. So when we come back, I think communication should be even more,
Yeah, we'll work on that. I have the privilege of asking these 2 questions all the time. Are the board members who have a burning question? If not, we're going to let them get back to their asynchronous assignments they have going on right now. Any burning questions the board member wishes to ask these 2 superstars here tonight?
Hey, Alex and Ray, this is Eldred Harris. I have a question for you guys. You are getting a taste of the real world now of students that you typically would not be exposed to until you either left high school much later in life, right? ACS in particular has been trying to prepare students for gaps in income, gaps in education, gaps in wealth, gaps in lots of things. How is seeing these disparities play out in real time in your country affecting you? And how might that change what either you want to learn or what you want to do after you leave us? Thanks.
Either
Ray,
one.
do you want to take this one? I can go.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I think that's a really powerful question. And I think you're totally right. That's something LACS focuses on. Myself, I've always been interested in politics itself, and I want to study political science. And this whole situation has kind of, widened my perspective on, disparities in education. And I just think we are super lucky that our school district is as wealthy as we are right now, and in the resources we have. I look at other school districts, and some are even they're looking at, distance learning. It's too hard right now. They're closing schools down early. I heard Washington, D.C. is closing 3 weeks early. So I'm really thankful that we still have this opportunity for education. And I think it's even more important at the younger school level. I know we talk mostly about, middle school and high school, but there's a lot of elementary school students out there, and that's some of the most important years for developmental learning. So.
Thanks. Ray, last thought?
Yeah, I think that for me, knowing different families with different sources of income and different alliances, it's pretty scary to see how much things can change just like that. Things you rely on, things you need to support you, yourself, your loved ones, and your families. And I think that we never would imagine some people as young as elementary students having to see and experience this and deal with this as them and their families struggle to learn, and not just learn, support themselves. I know I've known a lot of people through the Spencer district because of where my mother works, and distance learning has not been as easy for us as it has for them, and we are so grateful that we have the money and the means and the teachers and administration to switch just like that, whereas distance learning isn't an option for everyone, especially being online. Having this platform, having Zoom, having these talks online is not an option for every school district. So I think that it can be a huge blockade, but we're lucky we have it. Well, a lot of schools don't have that option.
All right, as you can see, we could, unless there's another burning question, we could talk to these two all evening. They are a resource to us, and if you wish, we can bring them back for more conversations in the coming weeks. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Ray, for being here. And Mr. Ainsley, I think just one quick item, if I could take the liberty with this little bit of time I have, because I was asked a direct question earlier in the agenda. While questions are always appropriate, oftentimes an answer is inappropriate. And when talking about salaries, whether they're administrative salaries, my salary, coaching stipends, teacher salaries, an answer about a negotiated conversation would be inappropriate for me to make in a public conversation like this. However, when questioning one another, our intent, I'm going to be very clear. As a coach has saved my life. I've been a coach all my life. We've grown our athletic programs here. We've grown our athletic stipends here. We've grown and supported athletics probably more so than any other school district in the country. So any intimation that we are disrespecting or not doing right by our athletic department or coaches is just inappropriate at best. So I will say that on the record. And if anyone has any conversations or questions about what we're doing as far as our processes with our coaches or stipends, call me. And I would love to have a conversation with you in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, Alex and Ray. Outstanding. And Ray, now I understand how over the last 7 years, Dr. Brown's gotten smarter every year. So, appreciate both of your efforts on advising Dr. Brown over the last few years. So it's much appreciated. So I think, Amanda, we're just going to switch on to the next item is the budget update, Dr. Brown, if we're ready to do that.
Yes, we're excited to bring to you some new information. And Amanda is going to be sharing some technical information, a practice of ours going forward. Right now, our industry, K-12, higher ed as well, we're all in uncharted territory. And while the shifts with teaching and learning are going to be important for us to navigate and navigate carefully, the fiscal environment is going to be something that we must navigate very, very carefully as well. It's hard to pick up anything that's related to K-12 right now and not see that we are going to be facing some severe challenges when it comes to funding our programs. So as a team, as an organization, we are committing to having ongoing conversations, very public conversations about where we are currently and where we hope to be in the future. And the information we're going to bring to you tonight, we're going to timestamp it. It's going to be as of 7:50 on April the 28th. We know some new information is going to be coming from our governor every day, and we know there's a big decision and information coming on April the 30th in a few days. So, but we want to give you yet some more information about where we are today with some of the most recent information that we've received over the last 2 weeks. And with that, I will turn it over to Amanda to share with you some slides and some images that we put together for you all this evening.
That's great. So I'm going to start. Hi, everyone. Amanda Verba here. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the district. Thank you for joining us from home during these meetings. And I usually start these by saying that I am very aware that we're actually talking about this information in a time that is absolutely correct, unprecedented. And for us, it's really important for you to know that we understand sort of the context under which that we're doing these conversations. So I'm just going to try to present here, and let me present that for you. There we are. And hopefully everybody can see my screen there for the budget presentation. As Dr. Brown mentioned, it's a rather simple agenda today. It really is taking a look at some of the historical data so that as we get more and more information, we can be ready to go for decision making. No decision making will happen this evening. This is just a mere step in the process towards education, transparency, revisiting some of the budget components that will come into play as the governor releases more information to us. So again, this is not for board members to make any decisions tonight. All of the timelines for budget development have been pushed forward due to this closure and due to the fact that we recognize that the true importance and emergency is about our health and our safety and taking care of our students and staff during this closure to make sure that we're connecting with them and learning with them. And the budget is pushed forward for that purpose so that we could focus on what was most important and then also be mindful that this will be coming our way. So I have included in this slide some links, and if you wanted to Google search these, if the links aren't working for you, 2 of the many reports that are coming out of different areas of Albany. One is out of the governor's budget. Another one is out of the School Boards Association. There's one from the American Teachers Association that's specific to New York State. There's another one that just came out today from the State Comptroller. So I will continue to try to keep those relevant and updated on the budget website, and we'll be working with our communication department to do so. I think an important thing that we need to talk about is our taxes overview. A lot of the conversation that we're having right now is primarily state aid, and we'll get to that. But really for us, being mindful of sort of what revenue we bring in locally and what that impact to the revenue might be if there's continued long-term closures to both Cornell and Ithaca College, as well as a slowing or even maybe stopping of development in the area, whether it be construction or real estate. So all of those things impact our assessed value, which is essentially what we tax off of to bring in our major source of revenue, which is our tax levy. And so this is just historical data to show you sort of where we've been in terms of the levy. And obviously, for many of you who have been tuning into these in years prior, the levy amount is the amount of money per a calculation that we are allowed to bring into Ithaca City School District as a taxing entity to support our budget, and that is voter approved. The levy increases each year. We've been pretty fortunate to show increases in the levy, mainly because we have growth and development in this community, and we're mindful of what we do locally with our capital work as well. That levy then is essentially divided into the assessed value, and that gives us a tax rate, right? So the assessed value is the value of the Ithaca City School District properties, whether they be retail or housing or rental, and those assessed values are gathered by our Tompkins County Assessment Department. Those numbers are given to us in the summer as a final number. In red, that is our estimation right now for this year. Even due to the closures, that value is already established or getting close to being established. So we don't know about the future years, but right now we know that that's about or close to where we will be come this summer when we start to think about our tax bills. The next one is the tax rate. That's the one that often matters to you as the taxpayer, the person who receives the tax bills. And so this amount is the amount that you would pay per $1,000 of your assessed value of your home or property. And so you get your tax bill, and this is for every $1,000 that your property is valued at, you would pay, currently $16.84. Next year, as you can see, we are seeing a decrease in that tax rate as well, as we have seen in all of the prior years since 2016, 2017. So again, as that assessed value changes, and if it does in the future, that would impact our tax rate, and we'll be watching that very closely. The state aid overview, I think that's really important to show as well. That is what is getting a lot of media attention right now in terms of all of the reports that were cited at the beginning of this presentation, but also just a lot of the dialogue and newspaper articles that you're seeing coming out of Albany and all across the state. You will hear the tenor of panic for a lot of people, unfortunately, mainly because there is no real data right now that we know in terms of what our state aid will be looking like for school districts. We know a few things. We know that we have certain aids that are refunded to us or reimbursed to us. That's everything below the foundation aid through the all other aids. So those are based on our behavior, sort of what we buy or do, that's reimbursed to us. The top row, though, that foundation aid that's running across with the largest amount in it in terms of state aid, is the one that everybody is tracking. And so right now, if you notice, we are locked in at the prior year's rate, and then it is decreased by over $1 million. That decrease is what the state is calling the pandemic adjustment. That money will then come back to us in federal aid, either through the state or directly from the feds. Those are all things that are up in the air right now that we don't know and that we'll be finding out. That leaves us with a final number of about 17,322,000. That number is also right now up in the air, and that's why I sort of put it in yellow and highlighted in that sort of bold black, because that is a number that could be moving. Depending on the day or the hour which you tune in to our Governor Andrew Cuomo and his daily briefings, that how the state Department of Budget is tracking what they have in terms of revenue at a state level. And when they were speaking about adjustments, they're meaning right now. That date that he gave in terms of the date specific that we would know about that additional adjustment is in just a few days, actually April 30th. So this is sort of one of those moments in time where Dr. Brown and I and the team were sitting here saying, we're gonna give you the numbers that we know to date, and we could calculate out for you all the other possibilities from 0 to 20 or above, and the reality is we just don't know. So we're trying to be very transparent in the information that we have, but also with the unknowns, we want to really almost save our energy for that moment in time when we know what that true picture is going to be. So in a couple of days, we'll know. We will alert the Board of Ed. We will alert our executive teams and our admin teams. We meet with them quite regularly. Those are our budget developers. They are waiting, and they're sort of trained to be looking for more information as that comes our way. So that's sort of the state aid, the state of state aid at the moment. Before I move on, I just wanted to see if there was any comments or questions about the state aid or any clarifications that I could provide. If not, I'm going to move on. So next, the next slide here, and again, this is one of those topics that we talk about quite often. And in fact, when we look at how often we talk about it compared to other school districts, I think we do a terrific job of being really transparent about where we are in terms of the way that we manage any excess revenues or expenditure savings or efficiencies that we've done during the year, when we end the year to the good, or when we end the year where revenue has outpaced expenditures, we've been really mindful of the way that we manage those monies. And we have been very mindful of not to ever sort of put into savings account too much, or use monies that were taxpayer dollars in a way that's sort of like stocking them away in a savings account, right? And so this slide shows one element of a savings account called a fund balance. And a fund balance is monies that we use either assigned to the budget, so that's that first row that's going across, monies that we put into the budget to balance the budget that's not earmarked or allocated for any particular purpose, but to serve a purpose of, if we need it, it is there for us to cover the cost of operations, right? And we've been very fortunate since 2016 and even before that, we were not dipping into fund balance, that we actually would allocate it or assign it into the budget, and then we didn't use it at the end of the year. So we could just carry that forward from year to year being unused. The next row, the unassigned fund balance, that is money that is not allocated or assigned to the budget, but it actually sits in sort of a savings account, and it's not a reserve. It doesn't have strings attached to it, but it sits in a savings account year after year. And essentially it is monitored and tracked, not just by us, but by our auditors and by the state comptroller. And there are limits to how much money you can put into sort of a non-earmarked or a non-reserve account. And so it's considered to be what's called unassigned, because it doesn't have a very specific purpose, but it's there for us to leverage for rainy days or to draw from if we need it when times are tough. That unassigned fund balance, as you can see in this current year, 2019-2020, we said that we based that on the close of the fiscal year 20, because we only know what we'll have in fund balance when we know how we've closed the year. We only know how much we'll have in fund balance if we know that our revenues have outpaced or underpaced our expenditures. And then that gives us the amount of monies that we can then either add or draw from the assigned fund balance or add to the unassigned fund balance. And so the other couple of rows there are just sort of the percentage of unassigned fund balance as a percentage of the total budget. That's the also known as the 4% maximum fund balance that's set by the comptroller. And as you can see, there were years when we were close to the 4%. And then last year, we did end the year positively. That money went actually into our capital reserve and not into our unassigned fund balance. We did that with purpose, because we wanted to be able to buy buses for another year. And so that's why you see that decrease there. So just so you know, this is sort of the fund balance overview. It's too soon to tell for the end of the year, but we are tracking that, and we actually report on that monthly at the Finance Committee. One other element I'd like to get
And I have a question.
Oh, sure, Nicole.
So when we're looking at assigned appropriate fund balance and unassigned fund balance, in your position, are you putting more weight on one or the other, or is there an equal correlation to how important they both are?
So I track them both for different reasons, right? So that first row, Nicole, that assigned fund balance is the one, like I said, that's actually part of the voter approved budget. It's actually listed as revenue on our revenue document that we put into the budget document that we send out to the voting public. And so, you know, we track that because when we put money into the budget as fund balance, if we start to dip into it to use it to pay for operations, then that's when we as a whole team, and when I say the team, I mean everybody, even students as advisory groups, right? We need to start to look at to say, okay, well, if we continue to use what's our savings account to pay for operations, those though that is not what fund balance is meant for. Fund balance is not to support long-term operations. It's there to sort of be in a place for, let's say, a moment in time where maybe a family moves into the district and we know that it's really going to be expensive to give them everything that they deserve and that is warranted in either an IEP, let's say. And so that fund balance we put into the budget because it's an unexpected expense. A boiler goes, you know, a roof is leaking, the heating fails at a building. That's really what fund balance is for. It's for sort of the what ifs, and almost always you can imagine when we have 1 million square feet or 6,000 students, there will be what ifs. The other one, the reason why I track that is because it really does, it is a meter of the health of the district in terms of sort of how well we're doing sort of with that rainy day account. And you want to have sort of a very reasonable amount in the unassigned fund balance that's sort of sitting in the bank because you can leverage it for a year like next year when we'll need it to add more toward the operations of the district. Or it helps you actually just to show the health of your district when you're going out for revenues such as like a bond or a ban to support your construction, right? It really is sort of the finger on the pulse of how well you're doing in terms of your health. And the comptroller caps it at 4% because there were times when it wasn't, that school districts were sort of hoarding money in that account, and that's just not fair to taxpayers. So I hope they're different, but they both have to be monitored for very important reasons.
Amanda, I also have a question on that. When we're looking at the 2021 assigned appropriated fund balance, and it's a lot more than it's been in the prior years because of course the budget situation that we're in, where are you taking it out of the unassigned fund balance the prior year? Like, how do you get to the 7 million? Like, where is it coming from? What account is it coming out of?
Absolutely. So there's 3 places that would come out of, right? So the first and foremost, it is if you track across the row, right? It would actually, whatever you end the year with from your prior year assigned appropriated fund balance, you carry that forward to the next year. So that's the first and foremost place. So we strive to end the year with, at minimum, the assigned appropriated fund balance that we have allocated so that we can carry it forward to the next year. So that accounts for the first 3.97 million, right? That we still have to get to 7 million. The next place that you would go to account for the amount of fund balance that you need to get to that 7 million would be to that unassigned fund balance. That unassigned fund balance, as you can see, we don't know yet where we're going to end the year, but that would be the second place that a district would go to then take it from the unassigned, sort of the no strings attached, and assign it to balance the budget. And then the final place that you go to is you actually can look at your reserves. And reserves can also be used, and they can be, they're restricted accounts, but they can actually be appropriated into your budget as revenue to address certain elements. And the next slide, I can go through some of the ways that we might use reserves. Some are set up for particular purposes, like to pay for retirement benefits or the costs of ERS or TRS billings. And we can allocate those in as revenue to pay for those bills or those costs. Some are sitting in reserve accounts that we, through Finance Committee, are going to want to analyze, and we started doing that already with our reserve account manual that we created just last year. And we can look at some of those reserve accounts and see if they're overfunded based on our past behaviors. And then we can actually, either through board action or through a public vote, can move and mobilize those funds that are sitting in those reserve accounts into the unassigned fund balance, thus giving us more money to move into the assigned fund balance.
Thanks.
Sure.
Amanda, just one question regarding the unassigned fund balance, if I could.
Sure.
You know, when we're looking at 1920 and you've got, when you say it's based on the close of the current year of 2020 in essentially the end of June, what has to be what has to be in our minds, obviously, is when the governor talks about making adjustments to state aid, and for the folks out there, those adjustments certainly would affect the 2021 school year, but those adjustments could also affect the 1920 school year, correct?
That is correct. That is why I very clearly said based on the close of fiscal year 20, because it would be insincere for me to try to put a guesstimate in that box prior to, at minimum, April 30th. Right,
and so just to when we talk about what is budgeted for various expenses throughout the year for the district, right, there are times when we can't always do what we wanted to do when we put the budget together. It's really a framework, and then we have to get down to what did we actually spend throughout the year, and that comes up with our fund balance at the end. And certainly an unknown, certainly the governor taking some of that aid away, the aid for the rest of the year. So we're still within this year, and we're still at risk of not being able to have all the revenue that we thought we were going to have, correct?
Correct.
Right. So, just because something is budgeted for the school year does not mean that, we don't have to make accountants make adjustments throughout the year to try to pay our bills.
That is correct, Rob.
Right. Trying to say it, but in a stumbling way. Thanks, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. It's Moira.
Hi, Moira.
So, with the projected 2020-2021 assigned appropriate fund balance. So if I'm understanding this right, this is our rainy day fund that we are proposing to set up for what ifs. So what are some of the particular what ifs or maybe even probables that has led to this putting aside or putting into the budget from fund balance and reserves this amount of money, this larger amount of money?
So to answer your question, in years prior, when we did not have closures like this, when we did not have situations where we know that state aid could be cut upwards of 20%, the term what ifs was really appropriate. This fund balance is now and will be used toward operations given the cuts that we are facing. We don't know how much in terms of, again, it's all too soon to tell. This $7 million that we're projecting right now is based on a budget, as Dr. Brown said, in a moment in time. That's the budget that we have at this moment to date on April 28th. And we knew that prior to the closure, right, that we were growing, we are innovative, we settled contracts, we have expenses that will continue to grow. And we were mindful sort of about the revenues that were coming in. Many of you sat through the town hall that we had on utility tax and explored that avenue. We've talked about very publicly what it would look like to go over the tax cap and what that would mean to our voters. And that's why we really are very intelligent about the tax rate versus the tax levy, because we've been sort of trained to sort of watch that. Moira, to your point though, right now, we know that our community is hurting. We know that our community is experiencing layoffs. those of you that were through this back in 2008 remember this, and this is almost sort of that deja vu all over again. At that time, the board and I know the executive team, although I wasn't part of it, but I've heard many stories saying that these were those moments where those quote rainy day funds or the what if funds needed to actually be allocated for the everyday expenses, the covering our costs, the payroll, the facilities, making sure that we still are who we are in terms of what we offer here at Ithaca City School District. So it's going to get a little bit harder to answer sort of in that 7 million, what is the what if and what is the we need it.
I think it's important to underscore for our community, and so that everyone is absolutely clear. While we participate in the year-round budgeting process, we're looking at you've heard the term new normal, or nothing will be the same after this current pandemic and this crisis. We're looking at this as a bit of a 2-year process. This budget and next year's budget will be our reactions or our resetting of our school district. Another name for a fund balance is a rainy day fund. It is raining. There's a storm. It is coming at us right now. So we're using those funds right now to maintain some programming, while at the same time talking about what our school district is going to look like going forward. We feel like, as an executive team presenting to you a funding request, that this can be a 2-year process. In no other year would we want to dip into fund balance at this level. We know that. This is a one-time dip. If we have a similar fiscal environment at this time next year, without any assistance from the federal government, which many school districts across the state are advocating for, our mayor is advocating for, without some additional supports, some additional revenue streams, we will be looking at some significant shifts as far as our programming and our offerings next year, in addition to what we may be doing in this current year. So yeah, we've been having conversations about everything. We're going to have a conversation about everything. So just to underscore that for our community, we're looking at this as a 2-year process. You have a last slide here, Amanda. You want to do sum this all up?
Hold on. My apologies, Amanda. Before we move, you can go back one. Dr. Brown, I appreciate that. I think it's also important. Oftentimes, I know as a new board member, I would see these numbers and be confused about the ways in which we would engage with the human aspect of a multi-million-dollar organization like a school district. I think it's important to realize that oftentimes we will include fund balance as revenue in an upcoming budget without realizing that that's non-renewable revenue, much like our savings account. So it's a rainy day fund, but once we spend it, it's gone. So we can't count on that for future years to replenish the same programs that we were trying to save or ensuring that we were trying to provide services to our young people during this year. So I think that's an important key piece. And I know that we have a number of unknown knowns or known unknowns, whatever way in which we want to engage it. And Dr. Brown, I think I'm going to ask you and your team in future meetings, not for this meeting, to have a conversation about how this translates to people. So what are the ways in which the number of FTEs or our full-time employees will change from year to year, how we've been doing that at various levels, and our absolute desire to be student-centered first and foremost, and then to the human level about what we're thinking about how we're going to try to maintain the employment of folks in our community. And so at a future meeting, if we can have a conversation about what those FTEs look like, that would be great. I would really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the last slide that I have that goes along with fund balance is another type of fund that school districts use to essentially put money into each year or carry forward each year for particular purposes. So the difference between a reserve and a fund balance is that fund balance is a little bit, it's actually not, there's no purpose behind it. It's just there for that sort of the savings account. A reserve account is in fact for either the details that are listed there sort of in that middle column or just by the name of it, you sort of can tell what it is used for. I just wanted to highlight some of the, this is very brief and it does does not include all of the rules for use, but we will be having a finance committee meeting on, I believe it's Tuesday, let me just take a peek here at the calendar. So I want to just make sure. Tuesday, May 12th, I believe, is when our next finance committee meeting is. We will be looking at these reserves so that if we need them to put into the unallocated or unassigned fund balance, we'll know how to be able to use them and what will be required of us by law to be able to leverage those funds and move them elsewhere. So I just wanted to sort of brief the community on that's something that we'll be discussing. And then finally, just a few things that we continue to do. That was a lot of numbers. And Sean, to your point, I think the one thing that I feel that I was really fortunate with is that before I became a business official 6 years ago, I had titles like Youth Development Director or Coordinator of Youth Development. So I'm very well grounded in the fact that this is always about young people. It's always about their families, and it's always about the families who are our employees. And so we don't ever forget that about the names and the faces that go along with all of those numbers. And these are real people with commitments in their personal lives. And we are just doing so stellar in terms of the closure. But when we all come back together, we want to make sure that there are as many places as possible for people to return to, because we consider this to be the absolute value of what we do. And so I don't want people to think that I'm ignorant to that. And it is so much about the relationships and the meetings and the connection and the collaboration that we have and the dialogue that we have with one another to take those numbers, remember, it's about people and sort of bridge that gap so that we are good stewards of the finances and the taxes and the state aid that we receive. And then also honor the people that we work for and with.
Amanda, thank you for that. My only quick, if I could, the next finance committee meeting is Tuesday, May 5th. It's a week from this Tuesday. That's right.
Thank you.
So, and folks, there'll be a Zoom invitation that goes out. I encourage our community to actively join our finance committee meetings. The committees is a great place where most of our work actually takes place, and the board meetings are more of what we report out from doing. So please, committee or community members, join us for our committee meetings.
Thanks, Sean. And Sean, during my day job, we call them unknown unknowns. So that's essentially the environment that we make decisions in, and what we will figure all this out. And Dr. Brown, thank you. Amanda, thank you. We'll move on. It's a resolution to send a letter requesting additional federal funding. That's a fairly timely topic, seemingly. And there is a resolution that's, I think we've discussed this a bit, and there is a letter that is going to go out, but you can see in your agenda, the various whereases and therefores. And we could use a motion on that.
Okay, this is Ann. I move to resolve to send a letter from that Rob would sign to from the City School District Board of Education that would advocate for funding, for federal funding dollars that could be used by school districts in these, that are incredibly necessary for a school district. So I guess that, so that's my motion.
Second it.
Okay.
Second by Pat. Anyone wish to speak to it? Are there any questions regarding the resolution? It's or the letter.
This is. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please. Nope.
This is just a couple words. We discussed this in Legislative Advocacy Committee last week, and we determined that it was pretty time sensitive to put this letter out. There is, as you know, Congress has been bringing some funds for many purposes, is huge numbers funding bills. However, so far, there has not been dedicated funding for state or local government or for school districts other than the part that went from the CARES Act. So we felt that it was timely, and I hope that you've had if you get a chance, we've been kind of tinkering with the language of the letter. So I don't know if we have that letter people to look at now. Otherwise, it is in the agenda packet.
So I think the letter has been vetted a bit, I think, and edited, correct, Sean?
Yes, it has. I'm trying to draw it up so everyone can take a look at it. I would highly recommend our board members take a look. The letter in essence is, as Ann stated, it would be signed by Rob on behalf of the board. And Ann, please correct me if I'm wrong. We have made the determination that it would be sent to Congressman Reed, Senator Schumer, and Senator Gillibrand. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. Yep.
And so it would be a letter in advocacy of additional federal funding that would come to the state, and then funding that would come to the state that would come specifically to school districts, is what we're asking the board to sign on behalf of the ICSD. And I thought there was a great addition to the letter, that it's not just being written on behalf of the board, but on behalf of the board and the 6,000 children served by the Ithaca City School District.
Agreed. Are we good? Can we vote on it?
Rob Ainsley.
Tricia, I'm not hearing any. I think we're ready to go. If you could call the roll.
Sure. Rob Ainsley.
Yes.
Erin Croyle.
Yes.
Sean Bradwell. Oh, Sean is
Unmute.
Unmute.
Unmute, Sean.
I'll get it worked out soon. Yes.
Eldred Harris.
Absolutely. Thanks for the work on the letter, guys.
Nicole Lefebvre.
Yes.
Moira Lang.
Yes.
Chris Malcolm.
Yes.
Ann Reichland.
Yes.
Patricia Wazalou.
Yes.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. And that letter will be generated, and I will sign as soon as it is presented, and we'll get that off. So thanks, everyone, and thanks, Tricia.
Thank
So we will roll into policy.
Rob, one more thing related to legislative advocacy.
Sure.
If I could just mention the other thing that we're also working on, and that we would like to present maybe to the next board meeting pertaining to advocacy in terms of some changes to Medicaid. So I don't know if we have time to talk about it tonight, or whether we just wait till the following week. So that's sort of in the pipeline.
I think it makes sense to give everybody a heads up, at least so they know what could potentially be coming down the pipeline.
And I recommend that we have that conversation during agenda item 10.1, other discussion items, that we give the board a heads up and continue with our agenda as stated.
Sounds perfect.
Yep, exactly.
Thanks.
And to that point, Sean, we'll go ahead, and we do have the Healthcare Reserve Fund policy for a second reading.
So for the community folks who've been following our board work, there's been tremendous work by the Legislative Advocacy Committee, both Ann Reichland, Eldred Harris, and former board member Brad Granger did amazing work in trying to push the New York State Legislature to pass a healthcare reserve fund, or to allow ICSD to create a healthcare reserve fund. We, along with that, had to create a policy that would outline what the expectations and the policies were for that fund. We, at our last board meeting, had a first reading of the Healthcare Reserve Fund policy. We are now moving to the second reading and adoption. It has passed through the policy committee, and it is up on the board. You can hopefully see it on your screen. My apologies, we have not assigned the number yet, but it will be in the 8,000 series, and we'll be assigning the number momentarily. But this is the second reading of the Health Insurance Reserve Fund that allows us to, similar to what people are talking about in terms of a rainy day fund, to make sure that we have funds allocated to protect the district against any significant healthcare costs that were unanticipated. And I'll stop there. Or shall I say, I move the Healthcare Reserve Fund policy for a second reading and adoption this evening.
I second that.
Go ahead, Eldred.
Well, I think Eldred got it.
That's okay.
Thank you, Pat. We appreciate you.
So Sean, we're good passing it, even though it does not have a number assigned to it. That's not a critical factor, correct?
That is correct. We'll make sure that Tricia assigns the appropriate number, and we'll work with Amanda to make sure, but to my board colleagues and to the public, it will be in the 8,000 series.
Okay. So move seconded. It's been vetted. There are no other changes, correct? So we can go ahead and vote, I believe.
Rob Ainsley?
Very good, Tricia. Yes, I vote yes.
Erin Croyle?
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell?
I am unmuted and I vote yes.
Eldred Harris?
Absolutely, yes.
Nicole LaFave?
Yes.
Moira Lang?
Yes.
Chris Malcolm? Chris?
He's trying to find his way.
Can you hear me? Yes.
We heard the pitter patter of little feet, Chris. It's good.
Ann Reichland?
Yes.
And Patricia Wazalu?
Yes.
All right, thanks everybody. So we look forward to, well, that's great work. Thanks. That was critical for our budgeting and how we manage our healthcare system. And so we're going to have another resolution appointing the district's data protection officer.
Great. Hi, folks. This is Lily Talcott, Deputy Superintendent here. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about this. So Education Law 2D requires us to essentially ensure protection of our students' information, right? Their personally identifiable information. And there are a series of contract addendums that we're putting together to ensure that each of our contracts that anything that has to do with student data are in compliance. Part of this law also requires that we appoint a data protection officer, and Zach Lind in his role as the Chief Information Officer fits this well. So that's the background on that.
Thanks, Lily. I don't know that there's, well, obviously any questions for Lily? It's not like we've seen this before. I believe this is the first time we have seen this, but it seems like it is required.
Indeed, and it's a new law. Yeah.
We always appreciate the new laws that come down our way, and many times they are not funded, but we do what we Albany directs us to do. So, we'll certainly we can need a motion for the resolution. Then we can have more questions if needed.
I'll move the resolution to appoint Zach Lind as our data protection officer.
I'll second.
Second by Pat. Any other questions regarding the resolution and why we need it? If not, Tricia, go ahead with the roll.
Sure. Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris, Eldred,
Yes, I'm sorry, I had a mouthful of cake.
Paul LaFave,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichland,
Yes.
Patricia Wazaluk.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Motion passed. And on to one of the last items is the academic calendar first reading for 2021. And there is a future, and we will have an academic calendar, correct?
Yes, we will. Bob, Lily, you wish to speak to this?
And this is just a first blush at it. Well, I'm sure this will come back to us again.
Rob, you couldn't have said it better than that. So I was just finding my unmute button. We worked in conjunction with the teachers president reviewing this. There isn't a lot we can do, especially when the BOCES budget, or excuse me, BOCES calendar is set, and we're pretty much tied a lot to that. So this is what it is. It's a first read. It looks good to us and to Adam. So we're proposing that it move forward.
And this is the first reading. We are not voting to accept tonight, Bob, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Thank you.
And Ms. Jane, what we typically do, we put this up on our website for the public to make comments on. We'll ask folks to comment via Let's Talk prior to the board making an official vote.
Correct. Thanks, Dr. Brown.
Rob, I received a couple of messages from folks in the community. One, making sure that we had the correct date for Indigenous Peoples Day, the federal holiday of Columbus Day, and also a strong recommendation to keep April 5th to April 9th, the spring recess. This year it coincides with Cornell's spring break, and that there was great support for that taking place. I'm also reminded that we had a number of presentations from students over the past 2 years to continue to push us to think about innovation in our calendar. And I know that's extremely difficult given that our calendar is in conjunction with other local school districts, including our TST BOCES district, as well as some state regulations. I've appreciated that we have added at least the dates of various religious holidays, given that our academic calendar is primarily based around Christian holidays. I do not see the lunar and or Chinese New Year. I'm hoping that we can add that in the future. But to the committee, I'm just wondering about the conversations that have happened about the culturally inclusive ways in which we've been thinking about our calendar, with complete understanding that we are highly limited in how we can proceed. But any update on those conversations would be great.
Anything else right now? So a first reading, does that, like other policies, do we have to vote on the first reading, or just, okay, we've seen it, or do we need to vote?
I don't believe this is official board policy, so I don't think it requires first and second reading. I think it's just for us. And Dr. Brown, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we're just notifying our community of what we're hoping to be adopting in the near future and giving people some time to reflect and respond to it.
Correct. Yeah.
Very good. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure folks didn't get confused by our procedures here. So good. Appreciate that. Appreciate the comments, Sean. We have heard from students, and we appreciate all their input. So Ann, other discussion items? I think you had one.
Yes, but I'm going to pass it off along to Erin, who can better explain it.
Very good.
Hi there. So at our last legislative advocacy meeting, I brought up how difficult this time is for families who have children with disabilities, and how, you know, most parents right now are finding it nearly impossible to teach their kids. So if you add a layer onto that, behavioral needs, medical needs, parents are really, really, really suffering. And so I suggested that we perhaps just write a letter to advocate for what some states have already done, which is ask that parents be paid for their respite care. So currently what New York is doing, there's nationwide, there is something called Appendix K that families who have children with medical and behavioral needs, many of them have what we call Medicaid waivers. Those waivers allow their families to have attendance and respite care in the home or in the community, right? It's home and community-based services. So what's going on, I just realized I need to give background, so I'm going to give a little more background. So what's going on now is that, hi, sweetie, I'm speaking right now, okay? I'll be done soon, okay? I know. So what's going on now is that families are allowed to, New York has utilized Appendix K, which is an emergency appendix to Medicaid kind of laws. New York is utilizing Appendix K to allow for respite during the day, during school hours. Normally, families cannot utilize that time during school hours because the children are at school. So, okay. So they've relaxed that, but the problem is that these families have to bring in outside care. And these are children who are high risk, and frankly, every person is high risk right now. And so it's not really feasible or possible or safe to use outside care. So the idea is that what some states have done is written a clause within Appendix K to allow for families to allow for their parents of these children to be paid. So the parent is the caregiver and they can be paid. And that is not something that happens easily. It's not something that is typically allowed ever, except extreme extenuating circumstances. And so given that families not only have to care for their child medically, care for their child behaviorally, but also have to work and have to teach their child and potentially take care of other children, I propose that we advocate on behalf of these families so they can get some pay, whether they need to take FMLA time or they're not working or they are working or they're shifting their hours. They would get some relief so they could focus their attention on their child and not on just all the extra things in their lives. And I hope that that makes sense. It's very, very complicated. So I hope that I explained that well.
Just to add one thing here is that Erin and Kate did work on a letter that also kind of explains things. And there are other states that have done this. So what I'm wondering if maybe would be good is we just, I think the letter, was it just last night that we saw that? So maybe we could share that with the rest of the board, and you would have the next couple of weeks to take a look at that and ask questions and go from there.
I
yes.
have one thing, Sean, I forgot to mention. This doesn't affect any school funding. So what came up in our conversations last week, the funds are all separate. So it costs the school nothing either way. And parents can't even use the funds that they have. So it's just kind of saying to OPWDD, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, we support you in accessing this for families, but it will affect the school financially nothing. It would just help families.
So Aaron, and to Kate Reed, our legal counsel, I want to thank you for the research and the letter that's written. The letter will be put up on a Google Doc for all board members to review. And my expectation is that we will write a resolution and put it on the next board agenda, if that works for the Legislative Advocacy Committee. That and realizing that, you know, the sooner we advocate, the better it is for everybody involved. But in order to follow our process, that it be on our next board meeting, which would, I believe, would be May 12th. And so if that works, we'll continue wordsmithing like we do all letters, and have our board president sign it on behalf of the board if it passes, if the resolution passes.
That works for me. Just one question for Erin. In terms of who the letter gets directed to, have you determined that?
So in the letter, we mentioned OPWDD. I believe that we should target OPWDD, but also legislators, including the governor, because all of them would have some sort of say in this. And they already have, if you look at the current Appendix K for the state of New York, there already are quite a few things that they've done in this time to provide relief, but they just haven't taken it to that step. So I think state legislators would be important to include.
To my board colleagues, we'll make sure that we include a list of exactly who the letter will be directed to. I imagine, as Aaron is saying, it'd be directed to a couple of folks, not just one single office. And so we'll make sure that the board knows exactly who will receive the copy of the letter.
Very good. Thanks, thanks, Ann. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for bringing it forward. And we look forward to seeing the resolution and then the final letter over the next couple of weeks. Upcoming dates. Next Tuesday, I believe, finance and facilities back on the regular schedule. And that's the next time we'll be Zooming around the community in a couple of meetings. Dr. Brown, do you have words of wisdom for the group?
Thank you for an efficient meeting. We're getting done before 9 o'clock, and we've been on Zoom call since 7 a.m. So thank you for an efficient and effective meeting tonight.
Well, thanks for not putting a lot more on the agenda that we didn't already agree to, Dr. Brown. So, and Lily and others. So, anything that we can do to keep the work moving forward, to support our teachers, support the community, support the kids. I'm fine doing a Zoom meeting once in a while. That's okay. We're glad to be here. Anything else for the good of the group? We're all good. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for having the kids participate. That was really refreshing, and if we could keep doing that, I think it would not only lift our spirits, but everyone else who's participating in these calls. Thanks.
And could I just want to say thanks to Alex Yu for staying with us to the not so bitter end. That's real dedication. Thanks, Alex.
Yes, and
go ahead.
Thanks to all of the students who participated. We'll be following up. The board officers will be talking to Dr. Brown and Mrs. Talcott around having additional students participate in future board meetings as well, making sure that we hear from a wide array of our students who are in our school district. And so be on the lookout for that. I didn't say this before previously, but I want to make sure we talked about the facilities committee meeting, which would also include conversations about our capital projects. I hope our community is very much aware We've said it repeatedly that the money that has been allocated for capital projects cannot be used for any other funding or budgetary issues other than capital projects. We'll talk much more about that next Tuesday. Please join us. And on Tuesday, May 19th, the policy committee gets back into its regular rotation. And so we're expecting a wide range of audience support to come participate in our next policy meeting.
We can hardly wait, Sean. We look forward to that. That's outstanding. Love policy. We talked about upcoming dates. This really is a big week. We'll know a lot more on April 30th about our near-term situation. By the end of the week, we'll have hopefully some direction on school for the rest of the year, and whether there will be a determination whether upstate will be different than downstate, and what we may have some known unknowns at that point, but right now we don't know. But so this is a big week. So enjoy the week, but know that there will be some definition coming up soon, and we appreciate that. We'll work with it, and we'll move forward. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Night.
Good night. Happy birthday, Eldred.
Happy birthday.
Thanks,
Happy
folks.
birthday, Eldred.
I must really like.
Happy born day. I don't know if you like it. You're talking to some kids.